It's great to see all this national media. It's just like this at our Wisconsin Lincoln days. Now, one thing that being on the 2012 ticket, I got a chance to come through Iowa. It's great to be back here again. And being on a ticket like that, it's a bitter loss. I mean, you feel it deep in your gut because you know the stakes of the country. Now, having gone through that, I've also had a lot of benefits. I've had a lot of folks, see me and recognize me throughout this whole country. My name ID has definitely gone up. I was getting on a plane about 3 months ago in Milwaukee. And this lady was looking at me and she took her phone out and she was taking pictures of me and going like this. And, I kind of felt like the polar bear exhibit at the zoo, I said, well, would you like to take a picture? She said, sure, yes. So we found some passerby, took a camera, took a picture with us. She said, oh, it is just so nice to finally meet you, Governor Walker. I've always wanted to meet you. To which I said, well, I hope I can count on your support in 2014. It gets better. A few weeks later, I was back at the Milwaukee airport. I live in Janesville with Janet and our 3 kids, and I go back and forth between D.C. and Milwaukee. And I get on my typical AirTran flight, and the 2 flight attendants are talking to each other. They're kind of pointing at me, looking and talking and pointing. And finally, one of them comes up to me, and she says, you're somebody famous. Are you Anthony Weiner? No, I'm Scott Walker. This is a true story. Look, one thing that this has given me, having had the opportunity to represent my party on a national ticket, is I have gotten to tour this country and see people from all walks of life. I'm basically kind of a walking focus group. And I gotta tell you, people are frightened about the future of this country. Everybody knows deep in their gut, we are on the wrong track. The central challenge of our country, if I could just summarize it briefly, is that we face an uncontrolled government that threatens to overwhelm us. You see, one of the challenges that Mitt and I had in 2012 is we sort of had a shadow box against big government in theory. We kept trying to say, this is what Obamacare is going to do. This is what Dodd-Frank, and by the way, if you don't know what Dodd-Frank is, it's basically Obamacare for banks. This is what this is going to become, and this is what all this debt leads to. The challenge we had was it was sort of our word against theirs. Because they did not put their program in practice yet. The president had total control of Congress in his first 2 years. Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid running the Senate, running the House. They passed all these bills, but they delayed its implementation until 2013. And so it was sort of our word against theirs. Well, guess what? Now we have big government in practice. And the theory is a whole lot different than what it looks like in practice. Remember, if you like your doctor, you can keep it. It's going to lower your healthcare costs, or if you like your healthcare plan, you can keep it. This is what is different now. People actually see that the results have nothing to do with the rhetoric that was used to sell this program. Take a look at where we're headed with debt now. Yesterday, House Republicans put our votes on the line, and we passed the 4th year in a row a budget that balances the budget and pays off our debt. And if there's one prediction I feel really secure in making, it is going to go nowhere, the United States Senate. Take a look at what the president just did with our military. I mean, it's sort of a bitter irony that the week that Vladimir Putin invades Ukraine, the president sends a budget to Congress that proposes to bring our army to a level we have not seen since before World War II, to shrink our Navy to a level we have not seen since before World War I, and to bring our Air Force to the lowest level we've ever seen. The only thing he wants to cut, compensation for our soldiers, our readiness, our military, not to save for deficit reduction. I would respect it more if it were for that. but to fuel more domestic spending. And so we see this big avalanche of debt in front of us. We see this hollowing out of our military. We see this huge, big government in practice. And we know our country's in the wrong track. The easier story to tell, the teachable moment we're in right now, is that this stuff has nothing to do with the promises they made to sell. I asked the Congressional Budget Office a little while ago. And as the Budget Committee Chairman, I get to have the Congressional Budget Office run all these numbers. And I'm a little bit of a numbers guy. And I said, I'm just curious. If we don't get our handle over spending, if we don't reform government, reform these entitlement programs and go after all this corporate welfare, what will the tax rates have to be on my kids when I've got grandkids? You know, when I've got grandkids running around like the age of my kids, what will the tax rates have to be? And they said, we can try to figure this out, we'll get back to you. So they got back to me and they sent me this letter. The low income tax bracket that low income Americans pay, which right now is 10%, that has to go to 25%. Then they say the middle income tax bracket for middle income taxpayers, that would have to go to 66%. And then the top tax rate, that one that all those successful small businesses, like subchapter S corporations pay, that would have to go to 88%. And then they said in the next sentence, this could have some negative effects on the economy at that time. You see, we know this is the path we're on. This is a huge threat to our self-governing future. This is not just economic. Take a look at the Little Sisters for the Poor. You've got the federal government telling a group of nuns in Colorado that they can't practice their faith the way they want to. You've got the federal government violating our First Amendment rights of conscience of religious freedom. We are increasingly being ruled by bureaucrats without our consent and a president who does not feel bound by the rule of law. Now, I can go on and on about the list of complaints, and we can air out our grievances. This fight is not about just balancing the budget, or reducing tax rates, or holding up our military, or protecting our conscience rights. This fight is basically a fight over one big idea, what we call the American idea. It's a really simple concept, but it's very unique. We're the only country actually founded on an idea. Our founders knew this well. For most of human history, the central idea was that some were born to rule and the rest were destined to obey. Our forebears rebelled against this belief, and from that was born the American idea. I've heard it from speech after speech here today. That's what gives me solace. We're reintroducing ourselves to it. The Declaration of Independence, it's sort of like the birth certificate of our country. The American idea is really clear. Each person is fundamentally equal and capable of governing themselves. The condition of your birth does not determine the outcome of your life in this country. This is a system of natural rights. Our rights, they're automatic, they're natural, they come before government. That's what's unique about our system and about our country. It's the idea which we are dedicated to. It is the truth that launched this nation, determined to make this truth real. Take a look at the examples of what this has done. I got a chance to see your congressional delegation, to see Terry and to see Kim and to see a lot of Iowans. In just a couple weeks ago, you dedicated a new statue to Norman Borlaug in the Capitol Rotunda. Every state gets 2 statues to put prominent citizens from their states that they're proud of. And millions of people, millions of tourists run through the Capitol in what we call Statutory Hall, where you can see this phenomenal, everybody needs to do this, where you can see this phenomenal statue of Norman Borlaug standing there with his clipboard in a field of wheat. This is a person that's very close. His history means a lot to our family. My wife is a shirt-tailed relative of Norman Borlaug. My mother-in-law is from Clinton, and her extended relatives are from Saudi. So we got to see the Petersons and the Ballas and the Borlaugs, and talk about family and shared memories. This is a guy, born a farm boy in Iowa, grew up on a farm had a dream, had a great education, came up with some amazing ideas, and was the father of the Green Revolution, and helped save 2 billion lives. Only in America. You know, when I go by that statue, which I pass it probably 8 times a day, it's right where we go to vote. It makes me think of other Iowa leaders and their potential. Heck, imagine what Chuck Grassley would have done with his life if only he had a law degree. The question is this. We know where we are at this moment in our history, and we're worried about it. We know what we believe in. We know what made this country great. We know what we need to do to get back on track. We have to get the consensus and the majority in the country ready to do it. So, what do? How do we do this? How do we put this thing back together before it's too late? You know, you can tell by my name, Ryan, I'm an Irish person, and so I get to go to this great lunch every year with the Irish Prime Minister right before St. Patrick's Day in the Capitol. His name, he goes by the Taoiseach, that's in Gaelic for Prime Minister. And they told us the story about these 3 Irish brothers who wanted to go to war, to fight in our allies. I mean, the Irish have been great allies. They've done a lot for us in Afghanistan and Iraq. And so it's kind of one of those Saving Private Ryan stories. They won't let all of the boys of a family go serve at the same time. So the 2 older ones got to go, and the younger one drove them down to Cork to see them off. And as the youngest brother saw them off, he said, I'm going to have a pint of Guinness in your name as if I were with the 3 of you, with the 3 of us together every day. So every day at noon, this young man would go into the pub. He'd call for 3 Guinnesses. He'd line them up right in front of him. This is Ireland, by the way. He'd order 3 Guinnesses and he'd drink them simultaneously. And apparently the pub owner, you know, he did this for like 3 or 4 weeks. The pub owner thought it was a little strange. Usually he ordered one after the other. And he came up to him and he said, what are you doing? He said, my brothers are off fighting in war. And I committed that I would have a pint with each of every one of them in their absence until they returned safely. Then, a couple weeks go by. He comes into the pub. He orders 2 pints of Guinness. Everybody's kind of whispering, looking at him. Pub owner comes over. He says, wow, I'm really, really sorry about your brother. He says, oh, what do you mean? I just gave up beer for Lent. There's a moral to this story. I'm not just an Irish guy who likes to tell Irish jokes. I can go on and on. This is the Lenten season. I'm also a Catholic, and so you have to give up something during Lent. Here's what I suggest we give up. Let's try to give up the infighting. Let's give up the tunnel vision. Let's give up the acrimony. The left loves to say that our party is in this big civil war, that we're tearing each other apart. I don't see it that way. Great candidates, all of these people, talked about the same ideals, talked about the same principles and policies. Pick the person you like the best. Fight really hard for that candidate. And at the end, after what is your primary, June 2nd, June 3rd? Unify. Unify. You know, to flip over to Scotland, to borrow a phrase Mel Gibson made famous in Braveheart, we need to unite the clans. And here's my point when I say this. This is not going to be easy. Getting this country right, getting it back on the right track, there isn't a silver bullet. There isn't like just one bill we can pass. We can't just bluster or twist arms and force it through. It's going to take a lot of work. The answer lies in the hard work of politics. Better arguments, better alternatives, better outreach. More focus on persuading, less focus on purging. And here's the key deal. Those of us who seek your support, who seek these positions of leadership, who want to lead, owe you, our employers, a very specific vision. You see, sometimes in politics, it is hard to tell who is here for a career and who is here for a cause. And the way to distinguish those who are just simply becoming tax collectors for the welfare state, those beers from those doers, is to hold them accountable for who they are, what they say they believe in, and then if they do it. That's the key. We need to spell out a very specific vision. Here is, using our birth certificate, the Declaration, and the ideas and the rights and the foundations from it, this great operating system, roadmap, operating manual, the Constitution, how we get this country back on track. Here's a clear set of principles. Here's a clear operating manual. Here's an actual plan. This is the horizon we're shooting for, right there. And here's how I choose to do it. Some days, we will take small steps in that direction. Other days, we'll take big leaps. That's what prudence is. Good sailors don't curse the wind. They use it to their advantage to get to their destination. And so when we look back at this moment, we've got to make sure that we send men and women who have conviction, who have principles, and who actually have a plan, so that we can hold them accountable to it. That's really important. But we have to remember, at the end of the day, this is about winning converts. This is about persuading. And I think we have a really good opportunity. You know why I think we have a good opportunity? Go to the barrios of western San Antonio. Go to the inner city in Chicago. Go to rural Oklahoma. Come to rural Wisconsin. Come to the broken factory towns we have in southeastern Wisconsin. Everybody says the same thing. It's not working. We have to show we have better ideas for all these afflictions. Because these principles that made this country great are timeless principles. They're not passé. Liberal progressives have overplayed their hand. They want us to delegate our power and authority to some nameless, faceless bureaucrat who can better harmonize our lives for us. We now know, because we have big government practice, that it doesn't work. And so we have to go back and say, here's our plan to balance the budget. Here's our plan to pay off the debt. Here's how we would get the cronyism out of the tax code and just let you keep more of your own hard-earned money. Here's how we could have millions of energy jobs in this country by just getting the government out of the way and stopping the government from stopping this great energy boom from happening. Here's how you have a strong military. Here's how you have an America in the world that has respect. Here is how you successfully fight poverty, not by simply managing poverty, but by going at the root causes of poverty to get people out of poverty in the first place. We don't believe in inputs and throwing more money at the problem. We believe in outcomes. We have to be not just the good opposition party. We have to be a great alternative party. And we have to show that these ideas and these principles, which made us so great in the first place, which we just swore allegiance to when we pledged, are as relevant and important today as they ever were before. That's a day that I think is coming. Because everybody knows we're on the wrong track. So when I'm sitting on my front porch, old and gray, with my granddaughter on my knee, I don't want to tell her, yeah, the country went down the tubes. America's a has-been. It was a great nation, but I just want you to know I voted against it every step of the way. That's not good enough. This is why we all have to get in the arena. This is why we have to unite at the end of the day. This is why the creative tension that is occurring in our party is more about tactics than about principles and policies. If there's anything I want to mention, leave you with, focus on the big picture, on the big idea. We know who we are. We know what made our country great. We know what will restore this country. We will disagree from time to time on tactics, but this party is a big tent party, and the tallest pole holding up that tent is self-determination, economic freedom, liberty, free enterprise, self-determination. That's who we are. That's why our veterans fought for it in the first place. And if we get that done, we will save this country. And by the way, Iowans, You have a unique and disproportionate influence in all of this. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for helping these candidates. And thank you for the unification that's going to be coming after these primaries. Thank you, everybody, and have a great night.